Welcome to our Hangout series, Innovation by Design, which is designed for innovation, design thinking, and IoT design leaders to share what's working for them, as well as the tips that can make others more successful. Today, our Hangout topic is smart, connected product design. What works and why? As the Internet of Things grows, consumers and companies alike struggle to understand what this innovation means for markets and for business units. This Hangout today will delve into what's working and why from a design and product perspective, and really why designs that can seem maybe destined to win at the end, they may fail, and why others are clearly a success. So we have incredible panelists today, and it will be a very lively dialogue. So let me jump in and introduce them. First, we have Rob Martins. He's futurist and VP of strategy for Allegion, where he uses his unique talent for identifying patterns and associations to look for emerging megatrends in technology, as well as ways that can be used to improve average person's day through brands like Schwab. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you.
And we also have Antonio Figueiredo, and he's Global Director of Emerging Industries and Technologies at Salesforce.com or Salesforce. Antonio focuses on bringing business model innovation to organizations using emerging technologies and sophisticated, tangible solutions. Antonio is a recognized change agent who embraces technical innovation and pilots organizations to long-term success. He's also a seasoned hands-on enterprise, IoT, and AI or artificial intelligence architect and technologist and a dynamic thought leader, which you will hear today. Welcome, Antonio.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be here.
So you can hear we have a very skilled, enthusiastic panel. So this will be a great hangout today. And we have Tom Burchard, my coworker here, who's VP of Experience Design at Altitude. Altitude's now part of the IoT and Product Innovation Group within Accenture. Tom focuses on understanding and designing the complex encounters that constitute the rich and multi-dimensional relationships between people and companies. As you can see, we've got a very experienced panel, as I mentioned, and I am Gretchen Hoffman, VP of Marketing at Altitude, and my role today is as the moderator. So Altitude is owned by Accenture, as we mentioned earlier, and we're a design and innovation firm based in Boston. And some of our clients are Under Armour, Nike, Thermo Scientific, among a few. And now let's get into the important panel dialogue. So to kick this off, let's start off, and Antonio, I'll ask you, as you're trying to creep away there on the picture, let's kick it off by asking each panelist to share a glimpse into what they're doing today with IoT and really where your perspective is coming from. Antonio.
Hi, thank you, Gretchen. At Salesforce, I help organizations to create engaging customer experience from their IoT-enabled products using Salesforce IoT and other products that we have in our platform, like artificial intelligence. So our capabilities to apply actual intelligence in the data that we make actionable from the devices, and addressing impactful and innovative use cases throughout different industries. I work with different groups, internal groups from marketing team, from business team, industry team, engineering product organizations, obviously with customers from different sectors, bringing these innovations and innovative solution to customer across all kinds of industry here in US and basically globally.
Excellent. Excellent. Rob, how about you?
So I work for a company called Allegion that is not necessarily, that name might not be familiar to a lot of people, but you're probably familiar with our brands. We're typically known as Schlage or Von Duprin or LCN, any number of things that you would typically associate with security and safety. Another popular brand, if you have a bicycle, you might have a kryptonite lock for your bike. So we participate in the IoT in many ways. Some you think of traditional from, hey, smart devices that I can check from a mobile device to see its status or to actually perform a function, all the way through to some pretty unusual things that are happening in the cloud. So I think it's particularly interesting to have a panel with Tom and Antonio as you really start to see the IoT and devices begin to break down those traditional barriers between a physical product like mine and a digital product like Antonio's. So I'm really looking forward to the dialogue today. It's a great group.
Yeah, it's great. You're right. You're very different perspectives. So it'll be interesting. And Tom.
Sure. So we work with a number of different companies, both in the B2B and the B2C space. Traditionally, product development companies that are trying to get into IoT, understand the opportunity there, merging digital with physical product. And so in consumer products, we're doing things like robotic pool cleaners for the home, beverage dispensing appliances also for the home. And then from an industrial products perspective, we're working with plumbing companies, traditional plumbing companies, helping them to understand what the opportunity is around IoT, as well as elevator companies, sort of predictive analytics. How do we start to think about better service, things like that. So it really spans a wide range.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I think the audience will hear very different perspectives, different types of products today, which is great. One thing I think before we also jump in is, people use IoT, they use smart connected. Rob, can you jump in here and just talk a little about why do we call it smart connected and how are all the connected designs necessarily smart?
Sure. Well, I think the first thing is, smart is a little bit of a misnomer and also obviously very confusing to a lot of folks. So you can have a smart device that's not necessarily connected to anything. You can also have a device that you might think is smart, but in actuality, it's just a basic functional piece. So one of our largest product categories that we provide, in particular in the consumer space, are smart connected locks, for example. So when we talk about a smart device, it can be something that, is as simple as it has incremental functions. So, hey, we can put a keypad in there. You can distribute a number of simple PIN codes to make it more convenient for you and your family to go for a run without having to carry keys with you. So it can be something as basic as that, all the way through to a smart connected device where, in the IoT, this concept of recipes or routines or complex relationships between multiple product or software application platforms takes place. So the definition of smart varies in some cases by the category that you sit in or by the way that the consumer interacts with the product. Our definition, again, of a smart device is something that is adding incremental value potentially to what its basic function is.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Antonio, how would you add anything to that, or?
Absolutely. This is a great it's a great answer from Rob. It's you nail it. So if Rob mentioned this, if the device is autonomously there, so it's just they can work by themselves. But I think when you say connected device, you mean you have a device like this that eventually this device not only having the processors, the sensors, there's some little storage in this device, but also be able to connect to a network. So why we do that? Why this device need to be connected to a network is essentially to add value. Well, that's where the business, the ROI is. Where you're gonna represent this device in the cloud to be able to trigger all the actions. You'll be able to make whatever data you're getting from this device more actionable. So you may call these smart or not so smart, depend of what your level of pickiness, if you will. But what I think is what you call today smart may not be as smart in the future. This is going to become commodity. Mm-hmm. You're going to see these things everywhere. You're gonna have this device in. If you don't use an IoT device today, which I almost doubt it, you're probably using it and you don't know, and that you'll be using this in the future. And then this is going to be a commodity. And then the customer will be asking for more capabilities. You're going to be asking for these guys not to be smart, but it's going to be more smarter and more intelligent. So see about what happened with cloud. Cloud is the star of a digital transformation, and it has become exactly that, a commodity. So that's why all these thousands and thousands of companies are moving to cloud. You see solutions with Salesforce that why people move there, because they see value. They don't want to have this army of people in their infrastructure or doing some work that could be more productive doing the cloud and then add more ROI for them. So this with connectivity and more intelligence and pushing this data to the right place, consider all some other facts that we can discuss here, and then add value in the cloud, that's going to be things that is going to get more and more smarter.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So let me just ask you along those lines is you're talking about how things are going to get smarter, but then there's also things that maybe are not smart designs. Are there criteria people can use to delineate between them?
I think, let me jump in on that one, Gretchen. I think there are. I think, crossing both Antonio and my worlds, call them categories, call them verticals, call them worlds. There are certain things that consumers are looking for, and whether you're a manufacturer or an application provider or a software as a service provider, you need to be keenly aware of. So for example, security and cybersecurity is a crucial, critical element associated with any kind of smart device going forward, whether that's a connected device or not. In the case of a connected device within this space, things like over-the-air updates, elements that allow for the product to, not only accept beneficial upgrades over time, just like Antonio and Salesforce are going to provide you with enhanced functionality over time. So does a company like Schlage. We can add incremental functionality to your connected door lock or something like that, additional features and additional pieces. So one is the ability to grow over time. But the second is none of us in today's environment would, for example, buy a mobile device or a laptop or a tablet or anything without the ability to protect ourselves through virus protection, through the latest levels of encryption for messaging, and all these other things that are critical and crucial. It is impossible to predict, what those things will be going forward. So it's really imperative when you're looking at designing a product for an end consumer, whether that be a B2B environment or whether that be a B2C environment, that you're working in this upgrade path for them and the ability to protect them while at the same time adding that incremental value so that they know they're getting a real return on that investment over time.
Yeah, Antonio, anything you want to add?
Yeah, sure. I agree with you, Rob. It's security, connectivity is those are key characteristics of connectivity. This device by itself, if you don't have connectivity, how can your car can communicate with your house and say, am I getting closer to my house? Bump the heat up. So the car communicating with my house. So we need to have this connectivity there. So connectivity is characteristics of this device that enables some of these capabilities of the product to exist outside the physical device. So what do we typically call this as a product mode. So, but what I've seen happening in the industry today is organizations are moving away from just having a hardware, selling to the consumer a hardware, and then moving from a hardware product organization to more a service organization. That is becoming a pattern. So then we have these two things here. So before I go there, I say, so when you purchase a product, it's not just one-time event anymore. it's through, like Rob said, this software upgrades, new feature that you push down to the software. Is the service experience changed over and over again? You need to be continuing innovating. So service is the key. It's not only the device you sell and you put in your house. So you have these two categories of things going on today. You have these service-enabled devices and device-enabled service. So when I say service-enabled device, I'm talking about Rob's Allegion door lockers, for example. I'm talking about thermostat. I'm talking about those type of products. So the device itself is the focus, is the big guy, is the one that you put in your living room. You walk, you come to your house, use your mobile device or your voice or whatever, and then you open the door, and then you show off to your neighbors, to your friends that you walk into the house. So it's the device is the focus. So the device is the most salient part of the system. When you talk about, again, rephrase here, service-enabled device. Whereas device-enabled service is system like security alarm. So you worry about the services in this case is the focus. So alarm systems is what the users, the customers, is care about. They don't care about if this little guy is in your window and needs to be replaced. And okay, this thing, the more hidden this thing is, the better for your house. So, but the thermostat, the locker, you show off. And then this thing is broken there. If you replace it, if you swap by a new one, the whole system is intact, continue working properly. So that's the two things that I think is happening in this environment. Again, organization moving from a product organization to a services organization to add more value to your customers. That's I think is kind of a training here.
Yeah, I completely agree, Antonio. I think there's the most important thing to understand is from my perspective, to echo those thoughts, is you're establishing a long-term relationship.
Yes.
Make no mistake, yes. You're no longer just buying a product. And it's not only for the consumer, it's for you as a manufacturer, it's for you as a service provider as well. You need to understand what the sustaining implications of that product are over time. And that is both financially, that is in terms of what kind of markets are you going to be in. So in our case, we would say that we're a company of experts, in particular in the safety and security space. However, by virtue of the relationships that our consumers desire to have through open integration and other pieces within this new smart world, digital home world, in the case of the consumer space, we're exposed to any number of other players and other business models and other pieces that we haven't been before. So another important piece to take into consideration as you plan for design and you plan for the consumer is we're huge advocates for open architecture solutions, solutions that integrate well, that provide incremental benefit without necessarily forcing the consumer to scrap a product or something else. You know, people are sensitive to built-in obsolescence. Mm-hmm. And especially in a smart world, one of the things they're looking for is how can I get longevity? And that's the difference between what we would call, what I would term as a gadget type of product that ultimately winds up in your, your junk drawer in your kitchen, versus a mature IoT product. And I think what you're seeing is, I always say the adults have kind of entered the room. So, brands like, our Schlage brand has been around for 100 years. You have Honeywell, you have Chamberlain, you have Lutron. You have meaningful, significant, long-time manufacturers that are then being bolstered by companies like Salesforce, AWS, people that have significant scale and significant ability to enhance the capabilities on the kind of original footprint and Antonio is referring to.
Yeah, fabulous dialogue. Tom, let's pull you in the conversation here. And we've heard some very good examples, I think, of the smart connected from Antonio, who's, for anyone who just joined, is from Salesforce, and also from Rob, who's from Allegion, who also is Schleg. And I was thinking, Tom, maybe you could talk a little bit more about other smart connected products that are on the market today. I mean, we hear about Siri and Echo a lot, but other ones, and why are you bringing those up?
Yeah, so I think Siri and Echo are cool examples, certainly ones that a lot of people are grabbing onto. For me, they are just another form of input or a form of inquiry. So basically, we get to go to Star Trek right now, right? We get to talk to our computers and they respond accordingly. But for me, I think the most exciting ones are those pervasive products that just fit naturally into our lives. You know, they essentially start to take products that we're familiar with and give them new meaning and new value and wrap new experiences around those. So, you know, an example would be, I think Schleg's a great one. You know, where locks used to keep people out of homes and provide a sense of security, now they're providing access. I get to decide who gets to get in that house and when, or I know when people show up in my house. And it's a different type of relationship, as Rob is saying, because you get to know more about these people. You fit into their lives in ways where you have to earn their respect and their trust. You know, for me, my Nest Protect is a great example. It's very in the background, but I have one over my bed, and at night when I shut that light off, it knows that I'm, you know, going to sleep, and you get that little green ring that just lets you know that the house is protected. I can sleep, you know, safe and sound, and I have nothing to worry about. So a lot of these are very showy, but I think the ones that sort of fit into the background and make our lives better are great. But I think the best examples are probably in the B2B space, I have to say right now, because a lot of the consumer ones are sort of point solutions. So we're seeing autonomous mining, autonomous farming, and those are completely changing those industries because they're creating ecosystems that didn't exist before. So you're not selling a tractor, you're selling a farm management system. And so I think some of the most exciting stuff isn't really necessarily consumer focused right now.
I got to tell you, I completely agree with that, Tom. You know, a big part of our business is actually in the non-residential, you know, institutional higher ed space. And I completely agree with you. I think the ability to cut down on the fragmentation and look at a much broader, more dynamic use case is fascinating. I do think what's interesting is you see a lot of the initial disruption with the consumer level, but then you see that cascading across into the space you're describing very, very quickly. I think that's one advantage probably that Antonio and I have is in my case, for example, I'll just pick a brand, you know, or, you know, overall, typically people would divide our categories into single family home, multifamily, and non-res institutional. Well, because we've had leadership positions in all three of those, as the futurist, I'm able to pick disruption from any one and place it elsewhere very quickly. I think, you know, Antonio has the same perspective, you know, within Salesforce, you know, such a broad offering. But I completely agree. I think there's more opportunities for immediate scale. And I also think those lines are beginning to blur. You know, you're starting to see consumer electronics, things that I would typically look at as a consumer electronic, or Antonio might look at as hey, this is focused on this audience, begin to leak across into those broader enterprise ecosystems. And that's both a blessing and a curse. You know, scale, your ability to scale and your ability to get, you know, and to maintain that frictionless experience is very important. And consumers, whether they're B2C consumers or B2B consumers, they make assumptions about technology and how it can scale. So your original design and intent is incredibly important.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the other thing, when you go and bring these all these experience, all these tying all these technologies together in enterprise environment where you need to enterprises to be looking for how can I be more preventive of downtimes? How can I be more predictive as far as my maintenance?
Yep.
How can I, based on all these devices that we spread in your ecosystem, how can we do a very simple thing called deflection? And then how can I optimize my customer services? And before the customer calls in, I already know what is the problem with. Maybe I can just have a message or avoid, for example, truck rolls to visit the house of the customer. Think about what we mentioned before, products moving from device to service focus. So if you charge the customer $100, let's say I'm going to sell you a thermostat for $200. Instead of selling it for $200, sell for $25. But then you're going to pay services for, let's say, $100. It means that if the customer has a problem, they're going to call the customer service. And then if they don't fix the problem there, they're going to send a truck roll there to fix the problem. And then those $100 is gone. So we need to use IoT to collect information from the consumer house or factory floor, whatever, and apply some intelligence to avoid those extra unnecessary services.
Yep.
Yeah, it's amazing even just listening to all your stories and examples of just think about how life is changing. Your everyday life is so impacted with IoT.
And also tie not only the data from these guys, but contextual data. Yes. Because let's say if someone is calling because, hey, I don't have electricity in my house, but I know that there is a big blizzard next to my home, and then there was another report from a tree falling to the wire. So you know what it is. So you'll be able to intelligently, the customer service, proactively send message to your customers because you know the grade and know everything. That's how we'll be moving to, guys. Being proactive and predictive, being ahead of the customer. We'll be responding to them, or not being responding, but be adding value to them even before they reach you.
I think the big thing, the question that I always get, and I know everybody on this panel does too, is what about adoption? You know, when is this going to hit? You know, and what's interesting is, in particular, in our kind of purview, a simple example is, for example, for large buildings, maybe tracking along what Tom was talking about. You're talking about building automation at an institutional level.
Yes.
We really have understood for quite some time the benefits of productivity around energy usage. You know, the primary one is HVAC, followed by lighting. You see lots of, different initiatives. Cisco's got their digital ceiling. You have a lot of big players involved in that space. Schneider, the list goes on. Then you also have a very mature group, when it comes to security. Access control is a nuanced yet very mature space. But what was historically missing was an element that I would call convenience. And the embodiment with all this is very dependent upon the maturation of IoT devices. And I think we're getting to that tipping point where the IoT devices and the supporting tools and structures, applications, and all the pieces that Antonio, Salesforce, and these other people bring to bear are now getting to the point where all of a sudden you now have energy, security, and convenience all in one. And what that can deliver at a consumer level, we would call a more personalized experience.
Yes.
But that personalized experience isn't just about, hey, when I walk in the building, turn the coffee pot on. That personalized experience can also be delivered to the facility executive, to the administrator that is managing a full campus of buildings, to do any number of things and to tailor that experience, take the friction out, and get the real productivity that people are looking for. And when you can demonstrate that kind of productivity, obviously your CFOs and your CIOs are extremely happy. And at the same time, your user community is delighted because what they've been introduced to is a far more frictionless experience overall. So everybody wins.
Yep.
And so I think that third leg of convenience, we are seeing that coming, and we're seeing a tipping point.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely. For the folks listening in, just as a reminder, please be sure to submit your questions or vote on the questions that we already have in there to make sure we get to those. And we will take your questions with the last 10 or 15 minutes. But so everyone on the panel, you've done a great job in terms of the stories on what's working. Again, that's the topic of the Hangout, smart connected product design, what works and why. But I'm going to shift this just a little bit to talk about what big mistakes are, companies making when they're moving smart connected designs forward. And, maybe Tom, you want to start that?
Sure. Well, I think companies see this as not only an opportunity, but also a threat. So I think there's different intent for getting into IoT. The two major mistakes I see, number one, are a focus on the business, which is often the threat part of this, which is they see an opportunity to disintermediate their business. So instead of being a traditional manufacturer, going through a distributor or a retailer, finally to the end consumer, they can sell right to that end consumer. And so that increases profit margins. You're direct in the sense that you get data from that end user that you wouldn't get otherwise. But I also see in that same instance, the opportunity for recurring revenue. So if you're an appliance manufacturer, say a refrigerator or something like that, you're going to sell that product once every 10 years. And so how do you start to sell other things, wrap services or consumables around that product, so people see the opportunity side as to enhance that revenue where I bought a product 10 years go by and I might see you again if I did a good job. So that's one, is that they're focusing on the business, not what the value is to the consumer. I would say the second one is a focus on technology. So just adding IoT to the thing that you make is not a good solution. So I've seen coffee makers that are IoT, which really don't make sense because you have to set them up anyways. We already have timers in coffee makers. The fact that you're going to sit in bed and connect, through the internet to your coffee maker to turn it on is not a real value. And so what I think we have to do is think beyond our product and think about what's the real value, what's the real opportunity to create something here. So I'd say those are the two traps. One is revenue, and the other is just adding tech for the sake of tech.
Yeah, Tom. Those are awesome points. That's why I was saying before here is it's not only about what you're gonna do with these, but how you're gonna make these events that you're gonna get from those devices actionable. How you're gonna push these things to the cloud, how you're gonna integrate with business processes, how you're going to trigger action, apply some intelligence here that you'll be able to be more proactive, predictive with the data, the events that you're getting here. It flies all over here from the device to the cloud. What are you gonna do with it? So I've seen lots of companies getting data from the device and putting a silo and not doing anything. So is this what you want to do with the data, or you want to make this data more actionable, apply business processes, apply intelligence rules, and be more actionable and more proactive, predictive, and possibly more cognitive what you're going to do with the data? And then that's why solutions that we see today in the market, like a Salesforce IoT, it's great capability to integrate all these components together and add big value and ROI to our customers.
I think that's a great point. I think we have to think about what's the data that we want to collect. I see a lot of companies saying, we just want to get data. There's a belief that somehow by synthesizing that data, we're going to see new opportunities, new value that we wouldn't see otherwise. So I think the question really is what kind of data are we looking for? And I think there has to be a reciprocity too with the consumer, whether that's B2B or B2C. Like, why do I get the right to get that information? And what am I giving back reciprocally, to say I'm providing value to you? Because people, they're worried about their data. And we just can't be taking that for granted. We actually have to be providing that value. But I think it's a trap just to say we need data because we're going to get something out of it.
Yeah.
I completely agree. I'm going to need to take a big old swig on my mug here before I answer this one. Cheers, Antonio.
Yes.
Those are great.
I think the bottom line on, there are a lot of misses, and as we mature the IoT space, you expect failure, and quite frankly, if you don't have it, it's not maturing fast enough. But I would completely echo what Tom and Antonio are saying here, and maybe just add a couple tactical points for people on the crowdcast who are thinking maybe from a product perspective, since I live in a manufacturing space. Not to be repetitive, but the first thing that you must understand is you are creating a long-term relationship with that consumer when you deliver a smart, connected product. The expectation for you is that you are going to be supporting that product going forward for whatever period of time that consumer expects. And I think a lot of people who are new into the space, and as Tom has said, and say, hey, it would be great, we need to get our products to the cloud. Think about that very carefully. Think about, what is the business model? What is the experience? What ultimately are you trying to do with that? Yep. Because the lines have blurred. It's no longer about, hey, I'm going to provide you with this product, and if you ever need support, we have the best warranty in the industry and we'll replace it. That's not what it is. It's a call in the middle of the night. It's a, hey, I would really like to see this integration. When are you going to have it? Because it's important to me. It's a, just like what Tom just said, it's a, are you protecting my data? Do I need to worry about privacy with your product? And I think one of the dangers within a space like this, and we've experienced it a couple of times, is not everyone is an expert in the space that they're running to. So for example, Allegion and my company are safety and security experts, and it's a life safety device. It might be connected, and you might not think of it all the time as a life safety device, but the truth is it's a life safety device. So part of the onus upon us as experts within that space is to make sure that people understand what the potential ramifications are for not planning in that way and having that baseline of understanding. Mm-hmm. The fact of the matter is that when you buy a smart connected device, the core features and functions of that device still need to be there and be a focus. Mm-hmm. Do not be distracted by this, connected benefit, because at the end of the day, it still needs to work.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
Do not be distracted.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great point. And I think as we're talking about keep the user needs in mind, human-centric design, would love to just talk a little bit about iterating and how many iterations, or how important is it to iterate so you can keep that long-term relationship with the customer as you're embarking on a smart connected design effort. So Antonio, do you want to jump in and comment on that?
Sure, absolutely. So when you design your IoT device, I believe that it's imperative that you have a proving ground. There's some sort of a test bed structure in place. And then I've seen all kinds of people just, some organizations, small organizations, build some device and put in the market. And then those those companies, they don't last forever. And then and what is the trust? I'm gonna buy this device and I put this device in a place that is critical. A couple of years down the road, that company behind that device is gone. Mm-hmm. So and that's from the trust perspective. And then you need to see who you buy those devices from. But from the how you design this, how you keep integrating, make sure that your device is solid, that you producing a superior product. Make sure that you pay attention to best practice to ensure security, privacy, interoperability, and use of standard technology. I've seen people that I hired, there's a couple of guys, very technical guys, and then they created its own protocol. Why you creating a proprietary protocol? If this guy hit the buzz, what are you gonna do it? So, and then sometimes you have no documentation whatsoever. So how's your configuration? What about compliance? Are you storing data that is sensitive in the device? Sometimes they do. So what about compliance? How you handle those things? So how, like Rob was saying, and before, how is it the interoperability of this device with the external world? So how can you apply patches, security patch, updates in this device? Is this something that you buy and then you deploy, and then if you need to do some apply certificates, and then you have to replace the device? How is that? What is your policy? What is your strategy?
Mm-hmm.
So if you think, and also the other key important here is, like Rob and Tom was saying, you need to understand what is the use case that you're going to use this, because that affects the technology that you're going to build this thing, that affect the protocol that you're going to use, that affect the power consumption this guy needs, and based on your use case, you're going to determine what is the bandwidth that you need for this device. And then just give a very quick an example. Let's say if you want to have this device, a small one, under the skin of a cow, for example, and then you wanted to track that cow for 5, 6, 7 years, 6 years, or something like that. So are you going to keep removing that device from the skin of that cow? No. You need to come up with a solution that stays there for all the life of that cow, for 6 years or so. And then the power in that device has to be self-sufficient. So you have to think about which protocol allows me to do that. Mm-hmm. And now what kind of technology that I have to put there. And so have I iterated enough in this to cover all the bases before I release this product? You know what I mean? It's not just one little punctual thing. Lots of things out there, and please use best practice open architecture.
From our standpoint, Antonio nails it. We're a little bit unique in the IoT space in that many of our devices don't necessarily have access to power. So they're battery operated. So you need to plan, as Antonio is, describing there. How are you going to manage that, over time, and how are you going to leverage the technology? So in our case, the easiest way, for example, to get something online is typically Wi-Fi, and unfortunately, Wi-Fi is battery hungry. Yeah. So in our case, we tend to use a mix of technologies. We use BLE. Some people might prefer mesh network technologies, but understanding that roadmap and understanding how you're going to stack your technology together to deliver that experience, not just when you launch it, but is that technology going to be there over that 3, 5, 7 year time frame is very, very important.
Yes.
One other critical point that I would like to make, and I know Tom's going to iterate on this after me here, is one of the things that makes me nuts, okay, is when I see product roadmaps that are in a typical swim lane, and it's talking about the iteration of a product as it is, that does not take into consideration the global mega trends and elements that we see. What about the fact that 5G is on its way? What about the inclusion of deep learning? What about all of these things such as augmented reality, virtual reality? How are those playing with this large technology stack that Antonio and I are talking about over the course of the life cycle of your product? My product life cycle might be 3 to 7 years. The hardware itself will last 20 or 30. For someone else, the life cycle of their product might be 6 years, might be 2 years, might even be 6 months. So,
no, I think that's right. I mean, certainly the technology is something that has to be iterated and taken into consideration. I think equally is the value proposition. When we start making smart connected devices from traditional product categories, it starts to fundamentally change that proposition, and we have to make sure that we're taking a human-centered approach to that. Are we actually delivering something, as I said before, that people want, that they value? And I think with that comes entirely new user experiences. So new value requires getting those experiences right, because it often changes the experience. And so, I mean, Uber's a great example. You used to hail a taxi, and now you just get on your phone, It knows where you are. It knows where you're going. You know something about the driver. The driver knows something about you. How do you contextually get that right in a way that people have never experienced before, and they innately understand the value of that? So I think not only from a technical standpoint, we have to think about the business, and then we have to think about the user experience, and those all need to be iterated as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the folks listening in, we will take your questions. Be sure to submit the questions or vote on the ones that are in there. We will take those towards the end. I also encourage you, we heard Rob, for example, talk about AR and AI. We do have the Innovation by Design Hangout series, which I think we've had about 12. Today is 13, lucky 13. On our website, Altitude Inc., under the Insights tab, you can see all the Hangouts. And there was just one on AI and also AR. So I encourage you to take advantage of those valuable free resources. So continuing on, done with the quick sales pitch. So exactly. All right, moving on. So I think there's been a lot of good examples given so far. So just keep the stories and examples coming. But I'm going to jump to Antonio. So how do you design for smart connected products so the data, because you talked about the data before, is even more meaningful and predictive, and use some additional examples?
Like Rob was saying, this device is ultimately is going to get, and both of us were saying this, it get smarter and smarter. And then Tom was mentioning there needs to be more better user experience and for the whole design, etc. But like Tom was saying, we need to make sure that the device works. We need to ensure that if this device is to measure humidity, temperature, motion, whatever it is, it has to do the homework. You need to get your thing done. So your device has to get it done as well. But from the enterprise perspective, for example, one of the key industries out there that is using IoT, is stepping ahead on the use of the IoT is manufacturing. So if I have a robot making cars, and this robot is stop working for a few minutes, it's a huge loss of revenue. So if you don't detect this, and before that thing happen, you keep hitting your bottom line every day.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to make the whole ecosystem. When I talk about end-to-end solution for your IT solution, is smarter and secure. When I talk about secure, I'm talking about cross-cutting layers of security. It's the whole thing. It's the whole end-to-end security. So if you have your device, and then this device talks to, let's say, an internal gateway in your factory or in your house. For example, Rob's device, they'll call via Wi-Fi. And this is another thing on the design thing. If you add this extra thing, adds costs in your device. So you need to make sure that you know what you're doing. So this device usually, for example, talk to this guy here, which you plug in your house, this new outlet. And this talks like, for example, protocols like Zigbee, for example, just as a given example. From here, it will send data to the cloud where you see the end-to-end value of this whole thing is happening. So that's where you see business process integration, you see your ROI, you see possibilities to convert that organization from being a reactive organization to be more proactive and predictive organization. That's what you're talking about here. These devices will be smarter eventually, more and more, but the real ROI you get when it comes from the cloud, especially in an enterprise environment, in a manufacturing, in healthcare, in all these industries out there. So that's what it needs to happen, is make this data actionable, use the right tool, the right platform that you can possibly apply whatever rules you can in your data, and in a way that is easy to get to the market. It's time to market. And then we're doing this thing today with pretty much no code of development. So you'll be able to quickly add value and to the whole ecosystem.
Great. Thank you. So we have 10 minutes left. So I'm going to jump in with one more question for Tom.
Yep.
And then I want each panelist to do a brief recap on what you want to make sure would be the key takeaways. Then I want to make sure to get to the questions of the panelists. Okay. So again, this topic is about smart connected product design, right? And so as we're talking about design, Tom, share some of the aha moments, that really come up that you think would be helpful for people to know.
I guess probably the biggest one I've seen is the aha is really for a lot of product companies realizing that they've been defining themselves by what they make as opposed to why they make it. So going from sort of a product-centric enterprise approach to this is what we've always made and this is how we pay for our kids' college education and pay for our mortgage, to an outcome-based, which is more human-centered, which is our clients or our customers are using this to do what, to achieve what goal. And when we focus on the goal, it fundamentally changes the value proposition. It creates new business models. It often turns product companies into service companies. And examples that I've seen that we've done work for. So we've turned plumbing fixture companies into water system management companies. We've turned from industrial floor scrubbers to a shine company. So they're focused more on the outcome, and I think that's a big aha because it fundamentally shifts the focus or the loci of the company to a different position, and it suggests they can add additional value, services, and it opens sort of the aperture for the things that you can do for a company or a client or a customer in an entirely different way. And so I think for me, those are the biggest aha moments because it's just mind shifting and it's transformational.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. What I'm hearing from all the panelists is don't let the technology drive you. It's human-centered design, right? I mean, really. So let's do this. Around the horn, we'll start with you first, Antonio, on just a couple takeaways, and you could have already said them before, but you want to make sure the audience remembers, okay?
So I think we already mentioned several of them here. We all know the opportunity for a smart device, smart connected products are enormous. So the product development challenges is also sometimes substantial. It depends on what you do. IoT is revolutionizing pretty much everything from wearables devices to automation, or another term you could use, insiderable devices. I may be coining this term here today. To home appliance, to medicine, to agriculture, to manufacturing, all kinds of industries out there. It's there. It's getting there. So new applications of technology are being imagined all the time. So are you be able to keep up with all these technologies? No, but what you need to do is understand your business, understand what are your goals. You understand what is the key use cases that you need to address in your organization. Sometimes you don't have that clear picture, and then see how IoT possibly combined with some other technologies can help you to get to there. So I think you should always think and we may not be calling IoT in the next 4 or 5 years, but it's going to be IoT. It may be calling something else, like probably things that I worked like 10 or 15 years ago. It was IoT, but it was not called IoT. So all this transformation is going to continue happening. So technology is continually evolving, and it will be relabeled all the time. So all these ideas that we discuss here, all these thoughts that we share with you here today, those ideas are transformative. So we need to keep doing it in the right and doing the right thing consistently. and constantly be innovative. Don't stop, be innovative, and don't forget to get.
Great, Rob. Hey, Rob, how about you?
Yeah, so just a couple of thoughts. I would echo what Antonio is saying, of course. I think the bottom line is what this is about is convergence, okay? And it's about managing that convergence between the digital and the physical and the connected and the non-connected. But at the end of the day, it's about the person who is touching or somehow interacting with your product. There is no surrogate for style and design and user experience. Those are not table stakes. Those are key and core differentiators for you within this space. Do not be infatuated with technology. Be infatuated about what the technology can do for you within the space. And what that means is focus on that use case, focus on what the goal is, focus on what the value is that you're going to add to your consumer over time. And by doing that, it's going to force you through a process of technology assessment, design assessment, all kinds of things that you might be somewhat uncomfortable with. But what I think you'll find is the space is maturing at a rate where there are going to be plenty of examples that you can look at. And if you do your homework, you won't step in the same buckets that some other early adopters have that have come in early and maybe browned out or failed.
Absolutely. Tom, let's jump to you, and then I'm going to go for about 4 or 5 more minutes. I want to make sure to get to a couple of the questions as I promised.
Sure.
Okay?
I guess the thoughts I'd leave people with is I think IoT is reshaping every industry under the sun right now, and it's absolutely resetting our expectations. You know, we deal with one of these, and we have liquid expectations across all the other aspects of our lives that things should be as simple as that. So while the world's changing, I think companies have to think about building their business around the things that aren't changing, which are those things that people value, because our values change very slowly. And what we need to do, to Rob's point, is employ the technology to deliver on that value, not become enamored with the technology. I love the quote from Jeff Bezos. He says, you have something that you know is true, even over the long term, you can afford to put a lot of energy into it. And I think he's talking about what it is that people want done and the things that they value. So if we focus on that, we're going to end up in the right spot.
Yeah.
Great. Absolutely great way to end. I really want to thank Antonio from Salesforce, Rob from Allegion, and you know, Tom from Accenture/Altitude. And I'm going to have us go ahead and jump to the questions. One thing that I do want to make sure folks know is for our hangout for next month, we have United Health and Simmons for designing to solve consumer-driven problems, which is very related to what we're talking about here, right? Your consumer is always at the hub. So with that, I'm going to jump to the questions. So there's one question here that I am going to jump to first. It's Erica's. Do you think that digital design and coding or prototyping is becoming fundamental to design education? And I'm going to have one panelist answer each just to keep it going. Rob, you're nodding. Can you jump in on that?
I'm happy to answer. So the simple answer is yes. I absolutely think it is fundamental. I think when you look at if you're working in a business like mine where there are tangible physical products and manufacturing involved, you know, whether it's wholly in-house or whether it's through partnerships and things like that, the lines between the digital assets associated with your product and physical assets are completely blurred. And quite frankly, if you don't see that blur now, I believe that you will in the future. Things that we presently refer to as a, you know, smart door lock or something like that, in a very short period of time, it's just going to be a door lock. Mm-hmm. So the bottom line is, yes, I think that type of digital exposure is going to be innate within any meaningful product design going forward. And I think that's a great investment for individuals, companies, HR, and change management managers across any type of enterprise or any type of industry.
Excellent. So I see some questions on iterating. Just for the folks listening in, there will be a hangout in November all about iterating, how much is too much. So I encourage you to attend that. I'm going to take one more question here I have of Sarah, which says, share some products that failed because they weren't rethought enough or possibly too much? I think we've talked a little about that, but can anyone add anything there?
I've seen some products like I guess I mentioned a couple of words on this. It's like people started building few things there. One, they started using very proprietary systems and then not be able to keep maintaining and iterating, apply patch and evolving if the technology evolves. And they also that's from the technical perspective. They don't have these proving ground to this test bed well, so they'll be able to really make sure that best practice and then standard technologies are applied. Sometimes they don't have good infrastructure in their organizations to make sure that the product, the design is solid. So that's from the technology perspective. No like user tests in the device. It's all very difficult to configure, and then it's difficult to apply certificates in the product. And so if this product is in the second floor, I move to the third floor, how can I detect that the product was moved? So those type of things is sometimes it's not well thought out. And then if you put this product in a very sensitive case, let's say you put this product in a fridge that is monitoring like a human organ, and then that fridge, that temperature has to be controlled very precisely. And then if someone moved that product, which is easy to do, and no one detect that product was moved, that organ is gonna die. So it's very critical if you do your design, you do right, but also the whole monitoring of this product. How are you gonna do this is external monitoring and any movement you do with it. So those are key things. And then in top of trust, in top of how easy to use those products.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I really want to thank our panelists. I clearly need to take up drinking coffee so I can get a very cool coffee cup. Those were very fun to include in here. But seriously, this has been a phenomenal panel. I hope the folks listening in have learned some things here, found it also as lively as I have. And Antonio, Rob, Tom, I really thank you for taking the time. And I thank the listeners for taking their time out also for listening in. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. My pleasure. Thank you.